I want to know where you've been recently and what you're up to.
Okay, recently, just before Christmas, I got back from the Ukraine, doing a medical installation. That's about all I can really tell you. I can't tell you where in the Ukraine. It's kind of security says it's taboo to talk about that kind of situation because it's a war zone and because there's still people on the ground. Any kind of thing that gets out to social media could link them to a site, gives a GPS coordinates by hook or by crook. They can work out a GPS coordinate and it becomes a site or it becomes a target.
Right.
So we don't do that.
Yep.
So it was Ukraine then, and then Ukraine in March, right after the war started. The war started in February. About a few days after the war started, I was there. Landed in Poland, and then they decided they wanted to set the hospital up in the Ukraine, so we set up in Lviv, which is an hour or so over the Polish border into the Ukraine. We set up in the parking lot of a huge mall. So we set up a hospital complete with surgical there. I was doing water at that point. So that mission, as they call it for me, was a WASH mission, which is WASH is water and sanitation and health. WASH, W-H-S-A-S-A-S-H, right?
Okay.
Okay, and then, but the last one, Ukraine, the last one was what I was called build team. So I can deploy in a number of roles. I can deploy as a WASH delegate. I can deploy as a build person. I can deploy also as a shelter program manager. So that is Ethiopia. Ethiopia is when I did shelter. So one military attacks a country. A lot of people are displaced, and so internally displaced. So they said, okay, go and start a program to get 5,000 shelters built for internally displaced folks. And so you go there and you hunt down an area, you look for a spot to put it up in, you get confirmation with the government, with security, and you settle on a spot, and then you get started building shelters. And you, mostly as a program manager, you're going to hire a bunch of folks, contractors, and buy a bunch of materials and build it according to a spec that's given to you by my employers, and their spec is determined by what the UN wants. And so it's out of a guide called a Sphere Guide, which is that's a real technical guide for all humanitarian aid work.
I should have highlighted who you get the call from and who you work for when you do this.
I've worked for two basic sending units or sending outfits. And one of them, first one I did hospitals for was the Red Cross, but the first missions I did were for Samaritan's Purse. It's a Christian organization. And so in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been Samaritan's Purse has sent me all around the globe. And so I find them a fantastic outfit to work for. They're concerned about their people. They make sure you get there, you get back. They make sure that you're healthy, all that kind of stuff. So they make sure that your family situation is good for you to deploy, because a lot of your ability to deploy depends on your family. You can't wander off across the globe and have things fall apart at home. So things have to be pretty solid at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. Yeah, so then the shelter thing is that can be really challenging. There's so many obstacles that can be in a guy's way. Militaries, who's in control of the site, who's in control of the whole region, how in control are they? The government of the area, are they on good terms with the local military, which sounds like they should be, but not always are, depending upon the situation you land in. And then, is there ownership of the land? Who owns the land? What's the water situation? What's the flood situation? What's the drought situation? What's the wildlife situation? What's the local population using the land for already? And so all those factors come into play, and so you do a lot of research before you can put up even a single shelter. You got to make sure that
Well, you're building mini communities.
yes, you're
in
building.
a hurry.
Yeah, you're building a village. You're going to build a village because you're going to build all the residents, and then you're going to build a medical post, and then usually the locals do all the shops and stuff. The entrepreneurs come out of the woodworks and they'll sell rice or clothing or whatever.
Yeah.
And so they'll take care of that. But you'll have to do the medical and then the school. You'll have to get some school facilities because you're going to, you have 5,000 shelters and 4 to 5 people per shelter. So that's 20,000 folks or so. And so you're going to have about 10,000 kids go to school. So you're going to need a couple of schools, right? You're going to need, so all that has to be done, and all that figuring out has to be done. So I'm a carpenter. I know about building. I know what I want for grade. I know what I want for soil types. I know what I want for the structures. They've all been spec'd out to me anyway. But even as a carpenter, I have to do a lot of figuring, a lot of trying to sort out how is this going to work. And so if I wasn't a carpenter, I could still be doing the same job. If you're looking at the specs and what has to be done, what the soil types need to be, talking to your medical folks, making sure that they can service the site, all that kind of stuff. So it gets a little complicated, but it's great work. I mean, when you leave feeling like you've made a step forward in getting these people new homes.
Yeah.
Right?
Must be very fulfilling. It's a little bit different than just doing someone's baseboards, eh?
Yeah. You go build somebody a garage, and I don't mind building a garage for somebody, but it's sure different when you see people who have been running through the desert for their lives, carrying their kids under their arms, and are living in squalor conditions, and you're there to give them a home.
Yeah.
That's a different story. When you see 20,000 people jammed in a school like the size of, let's say, Tweedsmuir, 20,000 people living in there, but there's no latrines, there's no toilets. So you can try to imagine conditions. Most of the men were dead because they were defending their families, giving their families a chance to run. So the guys went out and faced the machine guns while their wives and kids ran out the back door across the desert. And so when you get there, that's what you're dealing with. So if you're not up for seeing some tough stuff, I mean, you're going to see some pretty tough sights. I mean, people don't treat each other very nicely sometimes.
And you don't get a parade when you arrive either, probably?
No, there's no parade. There's no... There's a number of lanes, as they call it in our industry. In the humanitarian aid industry, there's a bunch of lanes. There's the medical lane, like you're either a nurse or a doctor, or you can be an accountant. Look, somebody's got to look after the money. You can be an administrator, where you're overseeing the project. You can be like me, wash or shelter, or you can be build team, or you can be distribution. Now, distribution, that's where people have donated money to, let's say, the Ukraine. And so right now we have a huge distribution thing going on. Tons and tons of aid. And so somebody is looking after getting that dispersed to the people that need it, right? In Ethiopia, it was really challenging because we were so remote, and access by road was being cut off by different militaries at different times. And so we were trying to get our stuff in there, and we'd get our stuff in there. So we'd get our kitchen kits in, pots and pans and cleaning stuff, and some dish rags and whatever, maybe a little stove, whatever the kitchen kit is designed for that country at that time. So we distribute those on Tuesday, and Wednesday morning you would see them in the markets being sold because you got them their kitchen kit before they got food. So they had no rice, they had nothing to cook. So they sell the pots and pans to buy rice, which you can't blame them. I mean, they're surviving. Yeah. They're surviving. So it's pretty amazing that those folks are surviving. And so you try to coordinate all that kind of stuff. So if you're doing food distribution, you want to get there first, if you possibly can. If a military holds up the food trucks for a week, we had them holding up. There's a plumpy nut kind of. It's a high energy, high nutrition food for malnutrition for kids, and a military group was holding that up in Ethiopia, and so we went to the governors and we went to the general and we said, you got to release that food because this is a humanitarian aid. This is absolutely critical. These kids are going to die if they don't get this food. I mean, there's no other food here for them, and they're at a point of malnutrition now. So we have to address this. And so you work through the upper echelons, and food gets released, but it's a week late. So you lose some kids, and you deal with some pretty tough stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty tough stuff. Now, I'm telling you all this, Dave, and we had this conversation about why we'd even do this kind of interview. And one of the things is I'm doing this, and I spend a couple of months a year. I usually go for a month, and I usually try and do 2, sometimes 3. I've done as many as 8 in 2 years, though. So I like the work. It's great work. I still do a little bit of stuff here around home. I have some clients that I still work for and do projects for, and that's great. But I would like to see other folks who are looking for a challenge and looking for something that's really rewarding. If you've got your ducks in a row, let's say, and you're up for it, this is a great work. I'm a Christian. I make no bones about being a Christian, and I really like working with the Christian organization that I work with. They're very keen on being accountable for all the money they spend, and I know that when I get sent to a country, every nickel that I'm given to, I have to account for it. I have to account. I spent 35 cents to buy some nails. I spent $1,000 to buy some eucalyptus poles. Whatever it is, I spent every nickel has to be accounted for. If you want a challenge, if you want to do something with your life where you feel like you're going to make a difference in people's lives, you're going to make a huge difference. You're going to come away from there, and those people are going to have tears in their eyes watching you leave because you're the guy who came and made a difference. So I work for Samaritan's Purse. They send me all over the planet. Red Cross does the same work. Doctors Without Borders, MSF, does the same work. Their lanes may be more specific. They may do more medical, but I landed in Tanzania some years ago, and MSF, Doctors Without Borders, was doing water. And so I go to the guy who's running the show for them. I said, "You're doing water?" He says, "Yeah, there was nobody else here doing it. So we did it." I said, "I'm going to be here for a bit. I'll take it." And then he says, "Great." Right? So
you don't have to be a Christian to do this. Right?
No,
there's other groups that you could join that are. Yeah.
There's all kinds of them.
And there's a little bit of pay to help.
Yeah, we get paid probably minimum wage, something like that. They get you there, they bring you back, so you got enough money to keep the lights on at home, kind of thing. If
a lot of different motivators for somebody. It's a hell of a vision of the world, but at least you get to see it.
Yes. People talk to me, so what do you think is going on in Ukraine? This guy do you think this guy is this way and this guy is this way? And I said, I sat with some people in the Ukraine who told me we're not going to quit because we don't want what they call the Holodomor to happen again, right? So their point of view is this is a repeat performance by Russia from 90 years ago. So I get a different perspective. I get it from on the ground, people who are affected by it. I walk around a little town buying my stuff in the Ukraine, and it's mostly military folk, and there's nobody smiling, right? I landed in a city on my way out, sort of, and and I'm waiting to receive some backfill people, the people coming in to replace some of the people that are going home. So my job is to meet them at this train station. It's a big train station. So I'm waiting outside watching the crowd for my people to come out because I'll be able to identify them. And there's this young military fellow walking towards the crowd, and then this young woman comes running out of the crowd and grabs him, right? And they're in this embrace, and I'm watching it for a couple of minutes, like just because it kept going. They're still, I mean, I can see her sobbing. I'm 100 feet away, but I can see her still sobbing. I mean, I get a pretty good picture of what's actually happening in the country. You watch a young couple, white knuckle, holding hands because he's heading back and she's heading back, right? The other way. You see that, and you see that played out in individual, and you see it played out by the thousands at the major train stations like in Lviv. You see that a train arrives in the morning with several thousand people on it. Everybody gets off the train. Mom grabs the kids and the bags, and grandma. And then an hour or two later, the train is heading back east to the front, and all the dads and their brothers and the fathers are getting on the train. So you can just imagine what's going on in that train station for those few hours. The goodbyes that are being said. I mean, I don't know about the politics. I don't know who's right and wrong. I can't tell you who's right and wrong, but I know what I'm looking at. And I'm looking at a lot of heartbreak here. A lot of heartbreak. A whole country in heartbreak. Right? So that's what I get to see. Ethiopia, I get to see and meet farmers who are willing to give up their farmland so that a village can be built there so the people who have been displaced have a place to live. He's willing to give up his farm. You know, all he wants is the crop. He just needs the grain so his family can stay alive. That's huge. I mean, would I be willing to give up my land to have a bunch of people live here? I mean, I think I'd struggle with that. So you get to see people at their very best, people at their very worst, of course. I mean, you get to see what's, you know, when a missile is GPS guided and it lands on a school, that's not an accident. If it's GPS guided and it lands on a school, somebody had the coordinates for that school and sent it there. Mm-hmm. So anyway, you get to see both, and you work with people who are like-minded.
Yeah.
I started working with some of those folks back in 2005 when I first did my overseas mission, and I'm still in contact with some of those folks, and we get together, and it's really cool. The last time you saw them was in Honduras at the airport. They dropped you off because that was their duty that day, is to get the folks to the airport. So you drop them off, say goodbye in Honduras, and the next time you see them, you're picking them up at the airport in Khartoum in Sudan.
No kidding.
Right? Or you're getting a text from them. Are you going to be first wave? Or are you going to be second wave on the Ukraine thing? Or Ethiopia, or Somalia, or wherever. Which wave are you going? I want to work with you again, right? So you get to meet some pretty amazing folks, and they're folks from all corners of the world as well. Australia, there's some folks I worked with from Australia that I'm still in contact with, and England, and all across the States, Africa, just amazing folks who want to make a difference on their planet. Making a difference here at home is great.
You do that too, though, eh?
Yeah. I was part of the first crew on getting the soup kitchen going way back when. I was part of the first crew getting the Habitat for Humanity going way back when. I work with the Red Cross doing what they call PDA, personal disaster assistance. So somebody's house burns down, I get a phone call, can you go take care of those folks, get them in a hotel, get them some clothing, get them some food, get them looked after. So, great, you go and help some folks out who just lost everything, right, in town. I don't mind helping out in town. I mean, I've done rather well. I mean, I'm not Howard Hughes, but I know I'm not worried about what's for supper tonight, although I got to cook it. But you know,
Yeah.
life's good. We in North America, we live very, very, very well. I went to a little village in Sierra Leone. I was doing Ebola way back in 14. And I went to this village. They said, go check out how they're doing for their quarantine in this little village. Well, you drive through this village and you drive through this elephant grass that's 10 or 12 feet tall. And you don't know if elephants are going to come out or not. But anyway, you drive these mud roads and you get to this village. And you walk around the village and you check out all the quarantine. And everybody seems to be in place. And a family comes to you and says, we haven't eaten in 10 days. You haven't eaten in 10 days? Yeah, we haven't had any rice. They need rice. If they don't have rice, they have nothing to eat. So to them, eating is equivalent to rice. They must have their rice. They're not thinking about a steak. They don't want a cheeseburger. They want a bowl of rice. I mean, and so I take that report back, and WFP has been having World Food Program, which is a subsidiary now of UN. They're having some difficulty with coordination and whatnot. Who knows? Planes get a flat tire. I don't know. Whatever. Shipments get held up at the dock, right? And so then trying to get it across the Serengeti or whatever they're trying to do there. And so they're not meeting the mandate that they're trying to meet. And so these people go hungry and they're in quarantine. And so we have nothing like that. We just went through COVID, and our big problem was toilet paper.
Yeah.
More toilet paper. You know, so if you want to get yourself out of this rat race, out of this mindset of me, go and have a look at what's happening with somebody else and give them a hand, right? Give them a hand. What's really neat, this last mission, I get back from the Ukraine, I'm on my way home, and I meet some folks in the airport, and long story short, I end up on a Facebook page, and I invited some folks to my home, some Ukrainians, right? So we landed them in May and had them for few months until we got them all working in their own place. They're all doing real good. So I said, I'm going back. Is there anybody you want me to see or anything? He said, would you mind going talking to our dad? So I said, absolutely. Let's talk to Dad, right? So I managed to meet Dad in a city we could both get to. So this guy can't stop shaking my hand. I mean, I can imagine where he's at. He had to send his kids away. He can't leave. He's 58. He's medical. He can't go anywhere. He can't leave the country. But he could send his daughters away, right? And so we landed them here with the granddaughter and whatnot, and got them jobs and whatever, and the city backed us up on that real well, and that was really great. But meeting that guy, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, he was some happy to see me and say thank you, in person. He could say thank you for landing my kids and looking after them, and they tell me they're doing real well and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's kind of a win-win for me, right? You get some new friends and you come away from it feeling like, yeah, I definitely made a difference in their lives, right? So when all the dust settles on your own life, did you make a difference?
Yeah.
And if you want to be able to answer that, well, I can say, well, I built some of the Union of Ontario Indian buildings. That's my life. Well, yeah, everybody has a job.
Yeah.
We all have jobs. We all do our jobs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We can do our jobs, strictly for profit, and that's what I was doing when I was there. But now I get paid, but it keeps the lights on.
Yeah.
But the real pay is meeting the folks and solving some of their problems as much as you possibly can, and that's pretty huge.
Oh, for sure.
That's pretty huge.
Sure. It's and we were talking earlier about juxtaposing the enthusiasm to help Ukrainian refugees and displaced people compared to some of the others and non-white European people that need it. And do you see a discrepancy at all?
Oh, for sure. The Ukrainians are us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, lots of us have Ukrainian heritage. I don't particularly.
I got a little bit.
But maybe over here.
A little bit.
just so you know.
Yeah.
The Ethiopian folks, I can't do anything for them once I've left their country.
Yeah.
Nothing. You can't get them into the country. A lot of the countries I go to are Muslim. And so in Islam, as I understand, you're allowed to have up to 4 wives. And so I'm working with these folks and whatever, and the guys figure out that I'm only got 1 wife. They you sit and chat about your family. Oh yeah, I got a wife and 3 kids and some grandkids and all this kind of stuff. And so they want to offer you their daughter as a wife, so you can take her back to Canada.
Yeah.
And this happens pretty regularly, and they're very serious about it. But I have, after a few missions, I had to develop an answer that would break the ice on this thing, because I don't want to insult the guy, like say your daughter's ugly or something. I said, look, if I take her back, when we land at the airport, one of us is going to die, and it's not going to be her, because when my wife sees me coming with another wife, that's about it.
We don't do that.
Yeah, we don't do that. No, she's not going to appreciate that.
Yeah.
So but they're desperate to get some help for their family. They know. I mean, they all have Google.
Yeah.
They have YouTube.
Yeah.
They see how we live, right?
Yeah.
And so they would like a taste of that. They would like something better for their kids than living on a mud flat in the middle of Mozambique, right? Where you're living on what you can grow, right? Yeah. So there is quite a difference between the color of your skin and your country of origin and whether or not you're getting into Canada. There is discrepancy for sure.
And here in Canada, we have some horrific situations in some Indigenous reserves. Yeah. Most have issues. A lot of them have had generational impacts by our policies, colonization, genocide, and whatnot. There's a lot of work here that can be done as well to help that. Have you ever seen any of the Christian groups involved with that?
Yeah, actually, SP was over COVID. They partnered with an air mission, and they were flying PPE up into the flying reserves, making sure they had PPE. And then I got asked actually if I would spend a month a year at a kind of a community center in northern British Columbia that was servicing that community, First Nations community, providing meals, and their kids were having a pretty high rate of suicide. So can you go there and run this community center, give the kids a place to go, some place so they can sit and play video games or something where they can be appreciated and something other than what they're doing that gets them into suicide. I wish I knew an easy answer to that problem. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There were so many mistakes made. I mean, there's been so many mistakes. How do you fix mistakes? I mean, reserves were a bad mistake in my mind, right? Put people somewhere where they can't make a living. That doesn't work. Right?
Lack of hope and future, and
absolutely,
and taking away their culture and stuff. Yeah. Yes, we have a lot of issues all over the world, and at home here too, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah,
it's a tough thing. I think mostly everybody needs to think about how they can help if they got the time and resources, and if they're bored and they don't have a purpose in life, right? Like those who benefit from their own situations, whether it's just because they're part of a colonizing country or whatnot. We do have it pretty good. I think everybody needs to figure out their part in helping others.
I see it, I put it in this frame for myself. I consider all the skill sets that I have, both mental and physical skill sets, are gifts. I consider them gifts from God. And then that makes me a steward of them. That means all that I possess, both materially and mentally, I am a steward. And so, like my shop that we're in right now gets used by other folks. It doesn't cost them anything to use it. But if they can make a few bucks and build something and get it done and improve their situation, great. My home, our whole property up here, we see lots of kids here come to play and just enjoy the freedom that they can have up here to roam around. So everything you have, if you look at it as you're the steward of it, and then if you have to give an account for that stewardship somewhere down the road, even to yourself, if you have to account to yourself, and if that accounting, in that accounting you say to yourself, I deserved it because I worked hard and I was careful. I saw a man in Sierra Leone who had like a 10-pound sledgehammer, and his job that he had for him and his family was breaking rocks into gravel. And he did that all the daylight hours. And his little kids, 6, 7, 8 years old, are carrying rocks on their head on top of a rag and bringing it over to Dad so he can break it into gravel. So, yeah, we work hard.
Perspective.
Yeah, we work hard. And if somebody else told me once, he said, if hard work and ingenuity was all you needed to become wealthy in this world, then every African woman would be that way, wealthy. But they're not.
No.
Hard work and ingenuity is works under this kind of situation that we have here, but it doesn't work for everybody. It just keeps them alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's just sharing what you have. Everybody should be sharing with what they have somehow.
Yeah. Can you identify those of your neighbors that could use a hand? Mm-hmm. I mean, when you blow the snow out of your driveway, do you make sure you don't blow across the pavement line onto the other guys, or do you go over there and take a couple of passes off there so that he can get out for work in the morning?
Yeah.
How do you run your life? Is everything that you have absolutely yours, and nobody should dare touch it, and I'm not doing a lick for anybody else because he wouldn't do it for me? If we frame ourselves with that kind of attitude, we box ourselves in that we can't do anything for anybody.
Yeah.
So if you do something for somebody who wouldn't do it for you, then they might change their mind. It may take them a few times before you do it. I mean, maybe you have to do that for them for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And then finally they change their mind and say, yeah, you know what? He looked after me for 10 years, that guy.
Wow.
Maybe I should make a difference here.
Yeah, well, it's good to see that you're making a difference. It sounds like you're enjoying it too.
I'm having a hoot.
Yeah, isn't that great? How old are you?
66 now.
Oh, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, but so I'm retired.
Yeah.
But I started into this in 2005, so I was younger.
Yeah.
Right. And but I would allow some time every year to do this. And being a general contractor, I would just tell my clients, I said, here's how it works. I do about a month or two a year in those days. And I leave at the drop of a hat. Mm-hmm. If a hurricane hits an area and they need water, then I get a phone call and I go and I turn the water on. So if I'm on your project, if it's critical, I won't leave. I'll be second wave. But if I can shut it down for a month, then I will.
Yeah.
And you'll be part of helping that village and that country get their water turned on. So, and my clients were all good with it. I never had anybody who said no. If they could be part of making it happen for another village, they're generally pretty good with it. So I found people, if you give them the opportunity, will take you up on it. So, yeah.
I kind of look at it sometimes, and we all can do a little bit more, but I don't. I'm not a Christian. I don't belong to a church, and I don't pay a tithe for anybody and that sort of thing. But I do, in my mind, owe 10% of myself to others.
Sure. Yeah. I get that. We live off our village. I mean, I have a living because other people need what I can give them. So I am indebted to the people who have hired me. Mm-hmm. In reality, I mean, if they didn't hire me, I'm a pretty hungry guy, right? We're not islands. We're not islands.
Well, I see millionaires to poverty-stricken people all understanding that they no matter what, they owe something.
Mm-hmm.
They owe somewhere.
Yeah.
They didn't build it on their own. I don't talk very long with people who believe that they don't owe the world anything. Right?
I was in Mozambique, and I got flown out onto this peninsula that had been washed over by a cyclone and had just been flooded. And so they dropped me there, and I was going to set up a hospital, and I did. And I'm about 2 weeks into the hospital, and these couple of guys come in on the helicopter, and they said, "Can we work over here?" And I said, "Yeah, this is my site up to the fence, right? You can have that, whatever you want." So they're a day or two there, and they set up this big ball, 12-foot in diameter ball, and they run an antenna up the water tower, and they put an antenna up there, and then they test our equipment, I guess, and they walk over to me and said, "Here's your Wi-Fi and your password for it." I said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, we just set you up a Wi-Fi. We're from the Bill Gates Foundation, and he sent us here to make sure you have Wi-Fi." I said, "Really? Thanks." I don't know Bill Gates, and I've heard, if I read all the accounts on Facebook of
Sort of
how bad the
mixed
person
reviews.
is, whatever. Hey, when I was in Mozambique, out on that mud flat, he sent a couple of guys to set up a Wi-Fi for me so that I could communicate.
Right.
So I could email my wife at home, "Hi, dear, look where I am," right? Yeah.
So at all levels, eh?
Yeah.
At all levels.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he has a foundation that does that kind of stuff.
I know some hand-to-mouth people that spend their time helping others.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really good to see that. We just met recently again at the Vest Projects gathering last Friday, right?
Right.
At the church.
Yes.
Is that St. Andrews?
St. Andrews United.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was I think one of the first times all of the different Ukrainian families in North Bay were able to meet up or something like that.
Yeah, been a couple of events, but I think there's more here now.
Yeah.
Like in the early part of the summer, there was an event as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a big sort of blending of different people in the community are involved with that.
Yeah, you look around the room, there's all kinds of folks there. Yeah. Who've been
from left to right.
Yes, the whole spectrum. If, like I said, if you give people opportunity in a place where they feel like they can fit in at their risk level, like my level of acceptable risk is much higher than the average bear.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I've gone into a war zone where there's 5 militaries vying for the site, right?
Yeah.
And managed to walk through there with my white flag and get my job done.
Yeah.
Other folks, it has to be from their home and they can drive with their car and do this thing and then go home. Yeah. That's all cool. Whatever your risk level is. I mean, mine is different than yours. That's fine, right? I'll go and, so because my risk level is where it is, I'm going to go do my time over there. Yeah. If your risk level says I need to stay in town, I'll leave it for you, right? There's plenty to do in town. I'll leave it for those whose risk level says I need to stay in town.
Yeah.
I mean, if I get a phone call, I'm going to go do what's called me to do. I got one this morning. A lady died. Can you go clear her driveway? The family's all meeting, right? So I go clear the driveway, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. It's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
You get a phone call, you go do what you can do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They know who you are. They know they can call you, right?
Yeah.
It's really nice if your neighbors know they can call you if they get their car off the driveway and you just need you to tug them back on or whatever it is. Can you come and make my toilet flush again, or whatever it is, right?
So the goal of this interview is to inspire some other people that see it to get involved at another level, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just stick your neck out a little bit for somebody else, and you might get slapped a couple times, but for me, I've had some missions that didn't work, but I have a lot of really good memories. I've made a difference for a number of folks in a number of countries that I carry those memories with me, right? One of the things I every once in a while I talk to a group of people, an organization like Canadian Club or whatever. Yeah.
Third Age Nipissing.
Third Age Nipissing.
Yeah.
And so what I like to tell the audience is that the money they donated to whomever for humanitarian aid work, I don't care who it is, these are the stories that you've paid for. My stories are the ones that you've paid for. Whether, you might not get that guy who's over spending your $10 or $100 or $1 million or whatever it is. But I'm telling you, these are the stories. I work with those guys on the field. I go to the MSF guy and say, hey, what are you guys doing? He says, we're going to do cholera. Okay, I'm going to do everything else over here. I'm going to set up surgical over here. So if you're doing cholera, I'm not going to allow for cholera. I'm going to work with you, give you whatever you need on my cholera stuff to do the cholera. I'll do the surgical because we can't mix the two anyway.
Yeah.
And so I see these guys, MSF guys, and I know what they're doing. So yeah, this is the story. This is what you paid for, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
So the question is this the call, and are you going to answer it? Right?
Perfect.
That's it.
That's it. Absolutely.
Well, thanks.
Thanks,
Really
Dave.
appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope it makes a difference for somebody. Gives them an encouragement to go. I mean, if people need to get hold of me, I'll talk to them about it.
Okay.